Assalamu alaikum, and welcome once again to another episode of the New World Education Podcast. We thank you for joining us, and we would like to thank the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center for, of course, sponsoring this podcast, this weekly podcast. We come to you every Saturday at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time, right here on this YouTube channel, the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center. And of course, the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center is a nonprofit educational center that educates at the speed of thought. It's dedicated to propagating the new educational paradigm that is put forth by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And at the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center, we offer consulting based upon the Supreme Wisdom curriculum. We also offer courses of study that one can take and can be conferred with a certificate of completion in teachership. So we teach educators how to transpose what they know in terms of what particular discipline that they may have gone to school in or may have had an interest in or want to teach or experience in. And we take that educator and teach them how to transpose the language of their particular discipline into the language of the Supreme Wisdom curriculum. Of course, we would like to thank on our set today, our co-host, Sister Demoiselle. She's not here yet, but she's on her way. We would like to thank her. She's our program manager and our sound engineer. And also we would like to thank Sister Gabrielle for blessing us with some of her time, because we know her time is very, very valuable. And also myself, Sister Deborah Muhammad, and I am the program director of the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center. So for all of those who are tuned in today, we would like to invite you to, of course, join our community. We would like for you to, of course, subscribe to this channel. And if you like the content that we are presenting to you, we ask that you please give us a thumbs up, give us a like, because, of course, it helps the algorithm. And of course, we would like for you to share this content with somebody who you think that may be interested in what we have to share. Now, we're going to have a discussion today on one of the 9 schools that are within the Supreme Wisdom curriculum. And this is the 9th of the 9 schools. We're saving the 8th for a later time. However, that's the 7th for a later time. However, what we would like for you to do is please join us in our chat, and any comments that you may have, any questions that you may have, feel free to come in and join in on our discussion, our dialogue. Of course, like we ended off last time, we said that these are conversations that in our family, we are in our household. We have these conversations all the time, and we would like to, basically we're inviting you into our personal conversations about the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as well as education. And remember last time, Sister Gabrielle, we left off on the whole thing about in our household, you were taught that there are 2 things that could solve most problems, most every problem. And one is, of course, education. And 2, he said, is garlic. And I forgot to tell you something that I found on Facebook. A sister had posted it. I wish I would have had her name, but she posted it on Facebook, and I thought I should share this with you just to verify the efficacy of garlic as a solution for most things. This is an article, even though we're in the midst of a pandemic. We're still in the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. And so some of the protocols that that have been introduced. So things like vitamin C, vitamin D, um, not selenium, zinc. You have different other protocols that have been put forth. And even with Dr. Aline offering the Paximune is an interferon, right? It's an alpha interferon. But interestingly enough, just to show that I was not wrong, that I was actually right, I have an article here that says systemic production of INF, interferon alpha, by garlic in humans, right? And I'm just going to read the abstract. Here's the article title here. Okay. And so I'm going to read the abstract right quick just to show you that garlic is actually just that powerful. The effect of food on the production of interferon alpha, IFN alpha, is currently unknown. It says garlic, used as a folk medicine, is reported to stimulate the nitric oxide production. We investigated the systemic increase of nitric oxide due to the ingestion of garlic on the plasma interferon level in normal volunteers. Normal volunteers, 10 groups, 10 in each group, ate 2 grams of fresh garlic and plasma nitric oxide and interferon alpha levels were determined after 2 and 4 hours. The participants were also asked to eat garlic for a variety of periods of time, and plasma nitric oxide and interferon alpha were similarly assayed. Ingestion of 2 grams of fresh but not boiled garlic was found to increase the basal plasma level of nitric oxide from 2.7 plus or minus 0.1 micrometers, I don't think it's micrometers, to 8.76 plus or minus 0.21. I'm sure it's not micrometers, but anyway, that wouldn't make sense. If it said grams, I would say yes, but no. There's a unit that I'm not familiar with at 2 and 4 hours respectively. So it says that the chronic eating of garlic was found to maintain interferon alpha at high levels for at least 7 days. How about that? So what they're saying is that this eating of garlic actually, because the human being has the interferons in them. So that's not something necessarily you can take something exogenous outside of self, but actually the human body produces these interferons. And the one that the Plaximune, it actually comes from bovine or cow's milk. So the human being actually produces interferons. And so what happens is that when you ingest garlic, raw garlic, it actually helps to stimulate the production of interferons within the human being. So right on it. I taught you right, young grasshopper. I taught you right. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on. We did have a comment last week from one of our viewers about the comment that was made about the external hard drive and the whole concept of terabytes. How many terabytes would it take, or how many terabytes? There are other things other than terabytes, would it take in order to store 150 years of information day by day, hour by hour, person by person. And so it was very interesting what we found, but what we'll do is we'll leave some clues in the description box below and let you all go and look it up a little bit more. But the brother that sent the information to us is a brother Ishmael Latif X, and he actually sent us some information about how many terabytes does it take to house all the information in the Library of Congress. So, very interesting. So today, before we go any further, I just want to know, how was your week been, Sister Gabrielle Muhammad?
Actually, starting at the beginning of the week, it was probably one of my best weeks in law school. I felt like I was like actually excelling. I was prepared. I was understanding everything. And then the second half of the week, I wasn't even asked any questions. So that was a reprieve. So it's all good in my book. My week is still
Oh,
continuing because I have homework, but all praises due to Allah. As long as everything is going well, I'm well. And even when it's not, I'm still well.
this
How
is
about you,
true.
Sister Deborah?
My week has been great. It's every day just goes by so fast. It's just like Einstein says, relativity is when you are, doing something you don't like, time goes by slowly. But when you do something you like, time speeds by. He said, when you're sitting next to a lovely lady, time goes by so quickly. And so the point is that when you're doing something you love, which, you know, life is pretty good right now. So it seems like I just never have enough time to do all the things that I would like to do.
And that
Yes,
is the importance of eating to live so you can add
yes,
more time onto your life.
exactly, exactly. Well, today we have another one of the schools, as we said, that we're going to be going into, and this is the School of Art, Culture, and General Civilization. And you know, and maybe you can help me out, Sister Gabrielle, and see about the the arts taken out of school. If you can Google that right quick for me, or because there was a push a while back to add more core courses or academic courses into the curriculum, and they begin to start taking out the courses such as band and things to that nature, because in this system they think that band is not um, it should not be considered a core course. And so what I'm suggesting is that um, art, culture, and a general civilization is just as important in your schooling as mathematics, because in truth it is mathematics, as science, in truth because it is science, or any of your courses, even is a language. So we're saying that it's so very important that one be exposed to art, um, culture, and general civilization, and art being, of course, the performing arts, as well as um, what we call graphic arts, or art in terms of drawing and painting and whatnot and sculpting. So, did you find anything yet with a quick
I,
search?
I found a lot of things,
Of
and I don't
course.
know what way you want it to be taken, but I found an article. It was on Forbes, but they asked me to disable my ad blocker, so I don't need it because that is not coming off. But I was looking at another article that was dealing with, I guess, a debate on whether you should get rid of arts in school
Mm-hmm.
or not.
Mm-hmm.
What you want me
So,
to share that?
yeah, just normally in articles, they'll give you the first paragraph will be the important material. I mean, important. Yeah. So if you
Okay,
can
give
just
me
go ahead and share that.
screen. Give me the screen sharing ability,
Yes,
please.
ma'am. Okie dokie. Okay, there you go.
Okay. All righty. Can you see me? So this is let's
Yes.
get rid of the of art education in schools. And it says, let's see, a writer, art enthusiast, and online ambassador for visual storytelling has a modest proposal for K-12 education. Let's trade art for creativity. Art, they say, is great for kids, which we know we don't call our children kids.
Mhm.
Art and music programs help keep them in school, make them more committed, enhance collaboration, strengthen ties to the community and to peers, improve motor and spatial and language skills. At
Mhm.
risk students who take art are significantly more likely to stay in school and ultimately get college degrees. A study by the College Board showed that students who took 4 years of art scored 91 points better on the SAT exams.
Hmm.
Awesome. Would you like me to continue reading, or I think that's
Yeah, just read the next paragraph because it's talking about how they took it out of school.
yes, ma'am. Nonetheless, arts education has been gutted in American public schools. After the recession of 2008,
Mhm.
80% of the nation's schools faced budget cuts. So follow the money. Whenever there's a
Mhm.
crime,
Where
follow
the
the
money
money.
reside, huh?
Yes,
Where the
where the
money
money
reside.
resides.
Yes.
So the crime of this failing education system, follow the money. In the
Mhm.
meantime, No Child Left Behind and the Common
Mhm.
Core state standards push educators to prioritize science and math over other subjects. Art programs were the first victim, and predictably, lower income and minority students were the most likely to lose their art programs. In Los Angeles County alone, one third of the art teachers were let go between 2008 and 2012. For half of the county's K through 5 students, art instruction disappeared altogether.
Yes.
So,
So, and it's very important. All of my children, with the exception of Sister Gabrielle, had she just had a different track, but had music as part of their education. You know, from at least from middle school all the way to high school. And personally, I believe that that is has been something that has been very integral in developing part of their brain, the creative part of their brains, because they tend to be think more creatively and holistically. Whereas, of course, I'm not necessarily saying this is a bad thing, but Sister Gabrielle things seems to think more concretely and I would say less creatively than the rest. She's more left brain because I think that music literally helps open up that side of the brain and art helps open up that side of the brain. But it wouldn't be by coincidence that she developed on that side more because when she was coming through, you know, her schooling, I was, of course, in physics. So I probably tended to lean more towards the STEM and um, more of developing the left side of the brain when she was coming along, perhaps than I did with my other children, because when I was with them, pregnant with them, I was in a more right brain field. I was actually in journalism. So, of course, that's a more considered a more right brain um, type of activity. Writing is more of a creative um, somewhat more of a creative activity. I believe is also a science as well. So, with that being said, what we want to do is delve off into this school, okay? And so we're going to start with the actual school first itself, and then we'll come back around to the um, discussion about it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can take a look at what we have in this School of Arts, Science, and General Civilization. So I pull a lot of the references have been pulled from Mother Tainetta Muhammad because that was really part of a major part of her focus was dealing with the arts because she was an accomplished musician and a designer, clothing designer, and she really she wrote plays. Just that was the water that she tended to swim in. So so let's go ahead and take a look at some of the references that we have here from Mother Tynetta. And this, her quote starts off the course introduction. The study of arts and sciences lead to the development of culture. Now just hear that. it leads to the development of culture, refinement, and high civilization. The combination of arts and science are essential ingredients of the divine creation and design of the divine creator himself. The Holy Quran upholds this testimony of the divine supreme being who generates and sustains his own created will as the defining principle and nature of all created life on our planet and in our universe. And so this comes from an article, Blessed Ramadan, Story of a Miracle, 40 Days and 40 Nights in Washington, D.C., from our beloved mother, Tainetta Muhammad. May Allah forever be pleased with her. So I want to read the definition, if you will, of what is civilization from the lessons, because everything, you were going to read that, Sister Gabrielle? That's why you smile?
Yes, ma'am. See, great minds, think alike.
Of course.
Or great minds that study the same things think alike.
Well, that should be the obvious conclusion. So, do you want to read the meaning? Okay, so I'm going to read this, and this is the meaning of the question was asked by Master Farrakhan Muhammad to his students. And the question is, what is the meaning of civilization? And the answer was given, in this case, by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The answer is one having knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, refinement, and is not savage, pursuit of happiness. Now, the next question, well, let's just stick on this right quick. The answer to civilization, as given by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, is one having knowledge. So, what is knowledge? Knowledge is not just information. Okay, having wisdom. Wisdom is the application of knowledge, and understanding will be what you glean from, knowledge, and wisdom is what you learn from the application of that knowledge. So, for example, I'm going to school to learn how to be, I don't know why phlebotomist came up in my mind, but that's what I thought about. So I go to school and I get the information. I learn about what is a vein. I learn about how to draw blood with a needle. I learn about that in theory. That's knowledge. But then what I do is that the next thing that I do is that I'm going to have to stick my classmate, because that's what they make you do. They make you stick your classmate and draw blood from your classmate. Now, there are all kinds of things that can happen. You can stick through the vein. Okay, that's a problem. Some people have very thin veins. So you have to get what they call butterfly needles, like they use in a baby. Or you may have people that are older that have what's called, and not just all older people, rolling veins. So that means when you stick the needle in, the vein actually moves. You may have people that you're trying to draw blood from, they're dehydrated. So they're not able to. So all of these different scenarios, after I've stuck and come in contact with all of these different scenarios, stuck the person who I'm drawing the blood from. Now I understand, what is a rolling vein? How do I approach this? When you have very small veins, how do I approach that? What if somebody has a collapsed vein? How do I draw blood from other parts of the body? So I'm saying all of this to say that once we actually apply the knowledge, okay, then what we gain is an understanding, okay, of how that knowledge is applied. And so the application of knowledge is wisdom. And then he says, above all, get understanding. So now I understand the different scenarios and how I approach this particular issue. And so, saying all that to say that this is one of the definitions of what he said that civilization is. So I want us to think about that. And the root word of civilization is civil, and it has different definitions of what civil refers to. So he says that one having knowledge, wisdom, understanding. But then it goes to culture. What is culture? So one of the definitions is culture, and then another one is refinement. And then he said, it's not savage. He gives us a definition of what a savage is. A savage is a person that has lost the knowledge of himself and who is living a beast life, according to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So we're going back again around to knowledge. So it says that civilization is one having knowledge, wisdom, understanding, culture, refinement, and is not savage. And then he says pursuit of happiness. That's civilization. Pursuit of happiness is a saying, and I'll look up the saying in just a second when I give Sister Gabrielle an opportunity to make her comments. But also, you find that in the preamble to the Constitution of the United States of America. Um, yes. So next, I want to go into. He says he asked Master Farad Muhammad asks, "What is the duty of the civilized person?" So now that we understand what civilization is, now what is the duty of those who are civilized? And it says, and it's in capital letters, to teach, capital letter, the uncivilized people who are savage, which we said that savage. I know, Sister Gabrielle, you're from Baton Rouge, and they have the whole savage country down there from Lil Boosie and his ilk. But we're not
We
talking.
no longer claim him.
We,
He is Atlanta's problem. You can
okay.
have him.
Yes. So anyway, who are savage, uh, civilization, righteousness, the knowledge of himself. Well, let me reread that again. What is the duty of the civilized person? To teach the uncivilized people who are savage. Teach them what? Civilization. Parenthetically stated, righteousness, the knowledge of himself, the science of everything in life, love, peace, and happiness. So, the duty of the civilized person is to teach the uncivilized people who are savage dash civilization. And so then we can go back up to the definition of civilization, which means one having knowledge, wisdom, understanding, cultural refinement, and is not savage, pursuit of happiness. So, yes, back to what Mother Tynetta said, the study of arts and sciences lead to the development of culture, refinement, and high civilization. So, Sister Gabrielle, I'm going to let you go ahead and jump in here at this point before we go any further.
Okay, well, as you stated earlier, this is not my wheelhouse. This is not my strong suit. So you already know, even when it comes to the School of Arts, Culture, and General Civilizations, which I probably won't be a teacher in. You won't see my name in the department.
Mine either.
But of course, I'm going to approach arts, culture, and general civilization from a scientific point of view.
That's the way it's supposed to be approached,
Which
ma'am.
I probably won't be a teacher in.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I do apologize for. Yes.
Okay.
Ma'am.
Okay, but yeah, so so backstory, because I don't want to get ahead of myself, so stop me if I'm going ahead of where you're trying to go. But again, and ironically, to see that on this side, I'm so what people will call left brain. They when they think of Sister Gabrielle, they think physics, they think logic, they think she's a pretty reasonable person. But before I chose physics as a major to study in college, I originally was interested in foreign languages and international studies. Because going to MUI, I've told a version of this story before, but going to MUI, in MUI, we didn't take American history. And so we were taking world history since fifth grade. And so in taking world history, that was one of my favorite subjects, if not my favorite subject in school at that time, because, I was always infatuated with different cultures and different civilizations, and especially the older ones. And so in studying, remembering all the way since fifth grade, and when you clear the terms for the chapters, we had that word culture. And so in basically what they explain as the culture, or what is culture, or what constitutes culture of a civilization. And one of the things that it included was religion, the art, and the languages. Those were the things that stuck out to me about culture. So along with the mores and the folk ways, they were saying is like a sign of civilization is it had, or one of those things that included in civilization is it had to have language, art, and some type of religious devotion. And so when I was thinking about how can I guess art in culture be synonymous, or how art can be an integral part of culture, and then of course all of those other things included, which is language and religion and mores and folkways, and even going to the word civilization. So before I go to start talking about what I gleaned from that, I want to clear the word civilization from just a dictionary point of view. You already gave us the most honorable Elijah Muhammad's definition, but this is what I'm going to get into. And so it defines civilization as the stage of human social and cultural development and organization that is considered most advanced. Another definition is the process by which a society or place reaches an advanced stage of social and cultural development and organization. Another definition is the society, culture, and way of life of a particular area. And so, as we can see, a lot of these definitions for civilization and culture are circular. So they keep going back to each other. But the main thing with all of those that is implicit in all of those are organization. Organization is what makes civilization. It is a structure which makes civilization. It is structure and organization that divides what we consider civilized and what divides what we consider savage. Because a human being is one being, but what differentiates a savage human being from a civilized human being? It's the structure and organization which with they live their life, or they interact with other people. It has to have a structure, and that structure itself, there's a science to the structure of life, and that's what we call civilization. In the highest form of that structure is the one that was given to us by Allah.
Yes, ma'am. That's awesome. I love the way that you put that together. And yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that is said of a civilization, just kind of like you said, with the circular understanding of it, that you cannot have, according to uh, sociologists and well, sociologists, let me just stay there, that you can't have a civilization unless if you have art. So art is one of the signs of having a civilized society.
Mhm.
And so let's really just go into this whole concept, because even though you say that you don't think you'll teach in this school, however, the reality of it is that, as you said, that art and science intersect.
Mhm.
So there is not that, and that's how we have to learn how to teach our children from that standpoint, because in Greek society, which of course they learned from the original people in Kemet or Egypt, that in order to be well educated, they said that one must not only, of course, have the academic side of education, the math and the science and whatnot, and the language. They said they also must be physically sound and fit. So they believed that they should be athletic. But the other thing is that they said that in order to have a classical education, that you must have also been able to draw you and be skilled in art. And this is the interesting thing about it. They looked at it from the standpoint that drawing and being able to look at something and reproducing it on paper actually helps one to be able to perceive reality. just perceive reality.
Mhm.
Because, you know, if you see me and the best you can draw is a stick person, there's something wrong with the connection between what you see outside and reality and the reality. So I just thought that that was very interesting that the Greeks also required in their schooling that the students learn how to draw, you know, because it helped them represent reality. And that's
Right.
very profound.
Right. And even what you were giving us a definition of civilization, or the duty of a civilized person is to teach. And so when you're trying to teach somebody civilization, and in this case even art, or you would ask the question, why would you teach them art? Because you're trying to teach them civilization and making that connection. Something that student Minister Ava said last night at study group, where she was
Mhm.
explaining that, we are, we're spiritual beings that still have a physical vessel that we have to
Yeah.
be mindful of. This is the conduit, or this is what we interact with the world in a physical world in. So
Mhm.
when you're talking about teaching a human being or civilizing a human being, in order to teach the whole human being, you have
Mhm.
to teach, the whole human being, which includes, you have to teach a way to, I guess, drive or move the spirit as well. So even in your
Mm.
education, the education cannot not take into consideration the other aspects of a human being outside of just the physical,
Mhm.
or even the logical aspect of a human being. Because within a human being, we are beings of logic and
Mhm.
reason, but also we have these things called emotion. Because
Mhm.
that's really what, one of the study guides is about, rising above emotion into the
Mhm.
thinking of God. So we still have, yeah, physical education we have to have a spiritual education, we
Mhm.
have to have an emotional education. So a
Mhm.
true education to civilize would have to be able to reach the
It,
entire human
it's
being.
holistic.
Hmm.
A holistic education. And speaking to that point, also, we want to look at what is the purpose of art? What
Hmm.
is the purpose of music? What is the purpose of the aesthetic? And all of those things are designed, or they can be designed to stimulate the senses.
Hmm.
So you have music that stimulates the auditory nerve. You have art, you know, visual art that stimulates the visual cortex. So when you're taking in all of these and symmetry and things like that, it appeals to the actual mind. When you see something that's asymmetrical, it literally disturbs the mind. When you hear something that's discordant, or you hear music that is out of key, it literally disturbs the mind. Or if you hear someone singing off key, or and you know, if they're tone deaf, it literally disturbs the mind. So art and culture, when they talk about refinement, it helps refine literally your thinking. And so those things are so important. And there's a science to color that literally can um, it can either excite you, like the color red is a color because of where it is on the spectrum, the electromagnetic spectrum. It literally causes agitation. That's why they use the red flag with the bull, because it
Hmm.
causes agitation. Then you have things like the color blue, that it actually calms you. And that's why they use blue in a lot of places like hospitals and um, other type of institutions where they want to keep you calm. The color yellow stimulates memory. So that's why they use yellow as the highlighting color, because it's designed, I mean, because of where it is on the electromagnetic spectrum, it literally stimulates that part of your brain where you store, you know, short, probably, I would say short and long term memory. But yes, there's a science to everything in life, as he said. And so it says, what is the duty of the civilized person? So it's not just, you know, just to teach math, or just to teach, it's to teach everything, the science of everything in life. So there's a science to everything that we do. So let's go ahead and move on a little further in the curriculum. And there's another reference here that we have from Mother Tainetta Muhammad. And I'm going to read this in its entirety because every part of it is important to this school of arts, culture, and general civilization. And it comes from an article that she had written under, it was a series of articles called Cultural Revolution Begins in Search of the Messiah, a journey into eternity. It says the nature of the new cultural revolution begins with an idea and a new thought that enters the brain as the conductor of electricity that energizes and amplifies all of our fields of energy within divine light as it relates to the development of the inner being, going back to what we were saying, giving form to a new creative expression. Continuing this series on the cultural revolution in search of the Messiah, I wish to define further the evolutionary meaning of these words. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated, and this is key, so if you had a highlighter, highlight this, that music, color, and medicine are the essence of God's true religion. While researching the subject over many years, I traveled to Egypt on my first overseas journey from America within the 3 months of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's departure in February of 1975. At that time, a meeting was arranged for me with one of Egypt's foremost composers and musicians, Ammar Sharif. This was my first acquaintance with Egypt, where I was hosted by an Egyptian family with whom contact has continued. I was accompanied by my 2 eldest children, my daughter Medea and son Ishmael. This meeting led me to my second recording of the Muslim song and March of Victory, which took place in the television studios in Cairo, Egypt. My initial recording, which was preserved on an RCA 45 speed record, was completed in Mexico City under the musical direction of Jesus Churcho Zarzosa in 1971. This musical work came by spiritual inspiration of my reading the Holy Quran. The composition is based on the 110th surah of the Holy Quran entitled El Nasr, the Help. While settling in the country of Mexico in 1974, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad guided me into valuable insight into and instructions regarding Mexico, my children's training and education, and the nation's evolutionary tract, which I thought that was very interesting how she put that. And this is 1974, the nation's evolutionary tract, including a variety of other subjects that I have shared with the leadership of the Nation of Islam over the past 25 years. In January of 1980, I turned at the turn of the 15th century of the Hijra of the Arab calendar, ending 1400 years from the time of the Prophet's flight from the holy city of Mecca. I met with the late Dr. Rashad Khalifa. He was born and raised in Egypt and was ultimately led to study the Holy Quran to the discovery of the number 19 mathematical code with the use of his computer. Now, this is 1980. So a 1980 computer crunching, or permuting information from the Holy Quran. Just imagine what we could do today with computer technology and decoding scripture. So she says, it was during this meeting when I first learned that my musical compositional work inspired from the 110th surah contained the mathematical code 19 in its combination of letters, numbers, and words. Historically, it was the whole chapter revealed to the Prophet in the holy city Mecca in the course of his farewell pilgrimage. As students being taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that Islam is mathematics, all my fields of study attest to and provide and prove that the universal language of mathematics provides for the measurement of music, parenthetically sound, color, parenthetically light, and medicine, which involves the chemistry of the atom of our life, DNA, and the physics of our universe. So, I think that is where, so I'm not going to read it in its entirety, but the link to the this document will be in the description box for anyone who would like to read the rest of the article. Now, because this is not ours, I forget how Sister Gabrielle put it, but our forte, that the course description is still yet to be determined by the Curriculum Council, as well as student outcomes. What are we trying to produce in the students through this? And inshallah, we'll get help with someone who is more well-versed in this than myself, Sister Gabrielle, and Sister Gabrielle. So let's look here at the Department of Arts and Culture Theory, an introduction. This is another article, and we're going to skip down to the second verse because it's very important. This is by Mother Tainetta Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad stated that there is a missing note in music. He never explained to me the details of what that missing note might be. It is incredible for the mind to perceive that a man who never studied music or higher education would have knowledge about music and its special relationship to the kingdom of God. He also stated that music, color, and medicine are the essence of God's true religion. It is evident that his master teacher, W. Fard Muhammad, taught him advanced sciences that would be studied in the life of the hereafter. As we go deeper and deeper into the unveiling of the musical code of the Holy Quran, we will begin to evolve into a higher frequency of sound, which may ultimately lead into the discovery of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad referred to as the missing note. And this is from an article in Search of the Messiah. The missing note in music may link to the magical world of the Chia Pods. So let's look at some of the courses. And in performing arts, we have musicology. We have tone, color alchemy, perfect pitch development program, music theory, and voice. Now, Sister Gabrielle, myself, and Sister Deborah, we all took music theory. Does that mean we know anything about music? No, but we do know how to count, and we may be able to read a little music on the staff. So we can count some beats and measures, and we can read the musical notes on the staff. Do we know music? Well, myself and Sister Gabrielle, no. Sister Demoiselle did play the saxophone, so she knows a little bit more of that than we do. So, musicology, what is it? I'm going to skip over the Greek, meaning music, okay, and the study of ology is a scholarly study of music. Now, I think that that's just fascinating. A scholarly study of music, because in physics, we did actually study sound and we studied light. And so, I could just see all that coalescing together in musicology. So a person who studies music is a musicologist. And Prince had a song called Musicology. You may not know that because you're a little younger than I am. But anyway, you should listen to that song Musicology because he was a musicologist. For a broad treatment, it says see the entry musicology in Grove's Dictionary and the entry on Musikwissenschaft. That's a German word, and I'm sure I mispronounced it, but nonetheless, there's the reference there. In the broad definition, the parent disciplines of musicology, get this, include history, because we were talking about art. Really, when people like the primitive art, it's their way of expressing history. Cave art was a way of expressing history. So, musicology, some of the parent disciplines include history, culture, cultural studies, gender studies, philosophy, aesthetics, semiotics, anthology, the cultural anthropology, archaeology, prehistory, psychology, sociology, physiology, and neuroscience, acoustics, psychoacoustics, and computer information sciences, and mathematics. Those are some of the parent disciplines of musicology. So once again, I say that it goes back to science, mathematics, even what they call the social sciences, because music does drive culture, and that's real. If you look at hip hop, it drives culture all over the planet. That's why the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talks about, how powerful these artists are, because they have an opportunity to be able to change people all over the world with just one song. Now, moving along, musicology has two central practically oriented subdisciplines with no parent discipline: performance practice and research, and the theory, analysis, and composition of music. The disciplinary neighbors of musicology address other forms of art, performance, ritual, and communication, including history and theory of visual and plastic arts, of of architecture, linguistics, literature, and theater, religion and theology, and sport. Musical knowledge and the know-how are applied in medicine, education, and music therapy, which may be regarded as the parent disciplines of applied musicology. Now, I just think that's so fascinating. And so, my mind understands it from the science, mathematics standpoint of view, but so very interesting. And we're not going to go into the rest of that, but we have instruments, learning how to play instruments, dance, and the history of theater arts. We have filmmaking, which includes, which really this is would be something so important for us to do, to tell our own story. In filmmaking, we have screenplay writing, film production, and cinematography. And then in the fine arts, we have sculpting, drawing, painting, and alternative media. And now we have Arts and Culture, Department of Arts and Culture practicum. And so the introduction and the courses are to be determined by the Curriculum Council, but we'll have music performance, theater performance, fine arts, and then we have lastly the Department of Arts and Culture internship. Now you take it and you apply it. So we have here two of our, in our Nation of Islam, two of our premier artists. We have Brother Henri, who is a musical genius, Maestro Henri El Mohammed, and he, of course, plays the violin. He is the director of the Muhammad School of Music out of, I think it's Buffalo, New York. And his daughter, Amira, I think she's a prima ballerina, or she's on track for becoming a prima ballerina. I think that she had like an internship with the Alvin Ailey School, or ballet troupe. I'm not sure, but I do remember seeing that. But you can find him on Facebook if you want to get more information about the Muhammad School of Music. and all of his children are involved in the arts, of course. So these are the strands for all the schools. And after this, we'll just get off into the conversation. But strand one is the use artistic expression to teach freedom, justice, and equality to all the human family of the planet Earth. Use artistic expression to teach freedom, justice, and equality to all the human family of the planet Earth. Next, strand two, to be imbued with a universal knowledge as expressed through music, art, theater, and dance. Three, strand three, to apply the universal wisdom of Allah God when expressing universal knowledge through an artistic means. Strand four, excuse me, I think the last one was three. This is four. Strand four, to have an understanding of how the arts are a means of transmitting universal knowledge across cultures. Strand five, displaying culture and refinement as recognized by civilized society. Strand six, to inspire the pursuit of happiness through the medium of artistic expression. That's supposed to be expression. And strand seven, to teach civilization, righteousness, the knowledge of self, and the science of everything in life, love, peace, and happiness, using the medium of artistic expression. So there we have it. That's the School of Arts, Culture, and General Civilization. So what we are proposing is that it's just as important to teach art, culture, and civilization as it is, just to exclusively teach mathematics or exclusively teach science, because it is mathematics, it is science, it is, like they say, a social science. So it's all of that. So this Supreme Wisdom curriculum, I will say that it is an integrated curriculum where we teach across, the curriculum. You have a theme, a thematic unit, and this thematic unit will touch all of the 9 schools, but honing in on the particular theme that we have chosen. So, yes. So if you're teaching, say for instance, if you're teaching on a history about the Ottoman Turks, and you can bring in from that, of course, you have your theological studies. You have, of course, the history of the Ottoman Empire. You can teach on, like, say for instance, the Sufi. A lot of the Sufi tradition come from out of there, and they have a lot of art, and they have a lot of poetry, and they have dance, the whirling dervishes. And so you can teach, on science as they produced, in the Ottoman Empire, they produced, of course, schools that had scientists and mathematicians. So you could teach all of that, and you just use a theme and teach across the curriculum with that one theme, and you can find that in that theme you will touch on all these different disciplines. And so anyway, that is kind of how we are looking at using art and culture as a cross-discipline or cross-disciplinary curriculum. Sister Gabrielle.
Yes, ma'am. I was just thinking, like, because I know you was gonna ask me to comment, and I'm like, what you went over was so much, and but so I had to kind of think about how I wanted to organize my comments, but kind of, and I felt like I might take us on a long journey, but please bear with me.
You're
because
ready? You're ready?
yeah, because you
Okay.
know how soon as the conversation starts flowing, I just start just spinning off my head. So I was actually doing a lot of research. I'm just researching things, pulling up things, flipping through things as the conversation is going. But in the beginning, we I think we did a pretty good job at definitely not exhaustive, but kind of making the defining what is civilization. And then we kept pointing out that in arts, art is a major part of civilization, and even some say you can't even be considered civilized if you or a culture or civilization can't be civilized unless it has some component of art.
Mhm.
And so what that I hear some background noise in here. I don't know if it's your
Okay, well, I'm just gonna go
microphone,
ahead and mute. Okay.
but the thing is, like, so the question that popped up to me is that, okay, if art is a major part of civilization, what is it about art that is synonymous with being civilized or is a sign of civilization? And so most of us a lot of times think, when we think art, we're like, that's paintings, sculpture. We think like kind of in a Western idea of what we were taught that art is. But for me personally, because like you were saying, I'm not a right brain person. I'm more left brain, more logically thinking instead of creatively thinking, or more emotionally thinking person. But at the same time, I do enjoy art. And even when as a logically thinking person, I see art mathematically. And so understanding that art is mathematics, I really can appreciate it. Because so when I'm thinking art, I don't just restrict art to just those medium of art that Western society has put up as, like you said, fine art, but everything is art. Because you know architecture is art, music is art, dance is art, like as you show, filmmaking is art. And so what do all of these things across the board, how do they serve society? And so its place in society is that one, because art has many uses, but one thing that they all commonly do is that they, I guess, enhance the quality of life. They make life enjoyable. Because I was thinking, even as somebody might consider as a logical person, in order to have my downtime and relax, I have to be entertained. Because as they say, all work and no play makes Gabby a dull girl. And so in his art, and in quality art, that makes I guess the payoff of doing all this work enjoyable. And so and it's the higher level of art brings you more enjoyment. And so, say for instance, like with a TV show, if I watch a TV show to relax and the TV show is trash, I don't get the enjoyment. So I'm going somewhere. Or if I want to relax and I listen to music that I find not pleasurable, it will actually worsen my mood. And so, what is the objective standard of what makes something good art and what makes something bad art? And so, when I think about it and break it down, it goes back to the organization of it. And so, this is what I always tell people. Somebody might say, "Oh, art is subjective; it's completely subjective, and beauty is in the eye of the beholder." But say, for instance, music. The difference between that, somebody can just say some form of a genre of music, what separates music from noise? Because somebody could say anything that makes a sound is music, and that is not true. What separates music from noise is rhythm, it's patterns, it's organizations, right? So what makes music? You have an intro, you have a hook, or the chorus, then you have that middle part, that bridge, which is your verse, and then you tie it off again with maybe a repeating hook. And so that's in because because music is rhythmical, that's why we can memorize it so easily. And so I can um rap songs or sing songs that I haven't listened to in years, maybe decades, because of the rhythm of it. It stimulates my memory, because things that go in patterns are easily remembered and easy to associate in the brain. So but if you tell me to be able to memorize a random um, section of sounds that doesn't have a rhythm, I can't remember it because that's noise. In noise, what our brain tends to do with noise is what? Blank it out. I can't. So even songs that don't have lyrics, I can remember the beats of the song and the key of the song and the tone of the song and all the ad libs and things like that because it's rhythm and that's mathematics. There's a rate, right? Every song has a BPM or beats per minute. Every song has a key that the song is in throughout majority of it. It might switch keys, but for the most part, it has a key. And things that are sonically that do not have a rhythm or a pattern, it really will actually cause you to it will have a physical and psychological and emotional effect on you. And so I, we understand that concept, and that's the same thing as art. Anybody say, oh, you just have random splashes of paint, on a page, or random, random markings or dashes of things, and that's considered art because it's considered beautiful to somebody else. But that again is not true. And so the most memorable art, the ones that stand out, there's a whole science or even disciplines. People have PhD in art and art history and things like that because they can tell you the story and the themes of the work itself. They can tell you that if you really pay attention, you can see a pattern in the brushstrokes. You can see a pattern with the choice of colors that they chose to use, and it can, you can see a theme in the piece itself. On it can pinpoint which message is trying to get out, or what kind of emotion that is trying to convey, or or the effect that it was meant to have. And it's the same thing with a sculpture. Say, for instance, with the sculpture, if you make a sculpture and it's just some random blob, you can't enjoy, looking at that piece because it's the randomness that separates going back to culture and civilization versus savagery. And so one is organized, one is patterned, and one is efficient and one is not. And so, and then that plays an effect on the psyche of the human being. And even when we look throughout creation, that even goes back to Allah, the creator himself. There is a pattern in creation. Then and so now, what from that, if we notice there's a pattern between life and death cycles of things, and then once something dies, another thing grows up out of that life. There's a pattern between night and day. There is a pattern, as Sister Deborah will get into, the mathematical and geometric patterns that we see throughout the universe with the growth spiral that plants grow in and our bodies are fashioned with, and the spiraling of the universe in galaxies. These are all patterns. So even Allah, the creator, is the highest level of he's civilized, and he created the universe with civilization. And so it's really on us, who's the beholder, to recognize the patterns in the universe, and in creation, to be able to enjoy creation. We cannot enjoy something that we don't understand. And and going back to pursuit of happiness. What is happiness? Another synonym for happiness is joy. So we as human beings, we experience joy in this life when we're able to recognize the patterns of life. Because in recognize the patterns of life, it brings us understanding and it brings us fulfillment. So that's one thing about art, that how, it is important and it's a mark of civilization. But another thing, not only just that art implies organization, and what separates art from random noise, whether physical or visual or auditory, is that what art also implies is deep thought, organization. Because another form of art that we overlook as art is what the literary arts, right? And so with art, in order to produce art, it requires a high level of intellectual capability. And that's another thing we see that differentiates human beings from our animal brethren, is that animals don't produce art, because art requires not just creativity, but it requires deep forethought, and it's purposeful. And so whenever an artist makes a painting, or a musician makes a song, or if a cinematographer or a videographer makes a video, in going into that project is, it was purposely created to convey a meaning. And so, and that's the difference. So a beaver can build a dam, but the beaver built the dam one out of instinct, and it really didn't really consider, it's a level of intellect, but it's not the highest level of intellect. It's a level, but it's just not the highest. And so a beaver can build a dam because of necessity, because of purpose, because of utility, but the dam wasn't built to convey a message, right? And so there's logical thinking, but the creative thinking requires a message, right? And so, in order, and that's the thing again, and that's thinking about creativity and art, is just another form of language. But it's a form of language that is more subtle, more potent, and more impactful than blatant language. Because if I write you a note, I can convey exactly with specificity, and I might even be able to, if I write it in a way, I can even convey my emotions and tone about it. But it's still not the, maybe even the complete energy that I wanted to convey. And so, and so art is more subtle than, just regular constructive language. And so with the art piece, with art, and the subjective part of art, or not just the subjective part, but the thing that separates art from regular language is that art requires interpretation. And so art challenges the consumer to think deeply. It challenges the consumer to not just think about what they feel and how they perceive it, but art forces the consumer to get into the mind of the person that created that art. Because the art, in order to even get that understanding, you have to get into the mind of the creator. So that's why still to this day, even though this is Western people, they still talk about the Mona Lisa and the curve of her lip, and the tilt of her chin, and the Sistine Chapel, and the painting, the creation of Adam, and the tilt of his finger, and the things like that, is because you really have to get into the mind of the artist to understand. And that, in order to get into that level of understanding, you cannot get that from an immediate glance. That's why when the art, when you want to be sophisticated, you go into an art gallery or something like that, you just sit there and look at it like, even though you still don't understand what it is, but you know that in order, that's what people who look at art do, because you know that if you just look at it and say, oh, I like it, and you just move past, you really haven't really appreciated that art. If you just look at it and see what you like. The point of it is to see the mind of the creator. And so yes, art is really another level of communication that distinguishes us from beasts. And so again, but you, in this one individual human being, you can still reflect both. You can reflect savage, and you can reflect civilized. But again, the highest form, or the destiny of human being, is to be the highest form of self, which is civilized. Just like with every acorn, the purpose of an acorn is not to stay an acorn. The purpose of an acorn is to one day be a tree, right? And so that's the same thing with humanity, is that we are not meant to stay at a savage level, even though we all start off as a savage. That just is what it is. Babies are savages. But we've all been there, and it's no shame in being a baby. There's no shame in being a savage, but it's the shame part comes when you stay there, because it is meant for you to progress stage after stage into your eventual perfection, as is all creation, or is all, not just creation, but all life. Because things that are alive, they go through different forms and different stages throughout their lifespan. You know, even though the sun wasn't always probably the size that it was and things like that, and that does have a life cycle too, but that's just a cycle we can't comprehend, is that's not a cycle we're involved in. But carbon life, organic life, you know, my science people, that's what it's about. But now, even going down to art, because if for the wise ones, if you listen to some of the things I said about art, is that art is about interpretation. That's really the gist of art, is interpretation. That's the goal of art, is interpretation. And I talked about how art has organization and structure in certain arts. And when you have things that repeating patterns over time, you call that rhythm. And so for the wise ones, that sounds like something else, which is called what? The seven hermetic principles. For all you know, my hoteps out there, all my secret sacred sciences out there, masons and stuff, don't bash me for calling it hermetic, because I don't know the proper name of it, but you know what I'm talking about. So that's why I don't like, you know, let's just say the seven universal principles, let's say it like that. And so even, and that ties back into how the message said that, what give me that quote again. I'm paraphrasing, but the essence of God's true religion is light or color, sound
Music, music,
or music,
uh-huh,
and medicine,
medicine. Mm-hmm.
right? So light, sound, and medicine. And that's really, when you think about art, art, you know, what in, as Sister Deborah talked about earlier, art is meant to be consumed through the senses, right? And so one of our five olfactory senses is that we have the taste, and there's also culinary art. And so let's not forget that either. But culinary art can be likened to medicine, because the message said that our kitchens or our cupboards, what's in our cupboards is our medicine. So, but you have in foods themselves, things that grow out of the earth have color, right? You know, a banana is orange. I mean, excuse me, a banana is yellow. But if a banana was orange, we're not going to call that a banana. That's something else. We have to give a new name to it. But anyway, so we have color, music, and medicine. And so with color, color comes from a spectrum of light. And that spectrum of light are oscillations or vibrations of energy, right? And that's the same thing with music. Music is sound. Sound is the vibration of air particles. So there's an oscillation or a vibration. And things that oscillate don't just oscillate willy-nilly, but they oscillate in patterns and in rhythm, right? And so going to the seven universal principles, I want to share my screen, because I don't know if we can get copyrighted for a screen share, but I know we can't do the videos. And so I have a couple of I'm trying to this thing is in my way. This thing at the top. Let me see. Here we go. So now we have the seven universal principles. And these seven principles include the principle of mentalism, what it says that all is mind, and that in this universe, anything that we can perceive mentally, we can achieve physically, right? Anything we set our minds to, we can accomplish. And that is the gist of creativity. That's the gist of arts, is that you have an idea or a thought in your mind, and then you bring it into this subjective physical reality for others to consume. But then you have the principle of correspondence. And we were talking about that when we were talking about the patterns in the universe. And so we look at the patterns in the universe of the spiraling of the universe, and the that same pattern can be seen in growth in creation, and that same pattern can be seen in time itself, and then that same pattern still applies to us. So as above is below. And so if in that, and same thing in algebra, is that if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, A is equal to C. So because of there's a correspondence, you need not experience a thing to be able to derive a thing, right? You can come to certain conclusions about things based on the correspondence, right? And so the next principle is the principle of vibration. Everything moves, everything vibrates. We talked about that. And everything that matters is made, well, not gonna say everything that matters, but everything in the universe that's physical is made up of matter. And matter is made up of atoms, and all atoms vibrate. Even if that we can't perceive the vibration, it's the vibration of those atoms that give us life. If those atoms stop moving, we would be in trouble. So even things that are solid, say for instance, I don't know if you can see this book, even though the page might seem solid, the atoms are vibrating. And it's the difference in those vibrations that gives us the variation in nature. The principle of polarity, that's how we perceive the world. The only way we can say something is hot is if we have the opposite is cold. When does hot turns to cold? You really can't pinpoint that, but you know that the opposite of hot is cold, just like up and down. When does up become down? When does left become right? When does east become west? But the only way we can determine our location or give somebody an understanding of, you know, what we see, we have to juxtapose it to something else that is opposite, right? The principle of rhythm, that's what we talked about. Because without rhythm, there will be noise. If there's noise, there's instability. So that's why even in our lives, when we're told to live our lives in a certain way, we produce rhythm, and rhythm produces harmony. And harmony and rhythm are the signs of good music. Parliament and Funkadelic. Funk music is a lot of harmony and rhythm, and we enjoy it. The principle of cause and effect, my favorite. There's no cause, there's no effect that wasn't preceded by a cause. The reason I'm here is because there was a man and a woman that got together and produced me. I didn't just pop out of nowhere, but there was a cause that led to the effect that is me. And that's the same thing with everything in life. So if the Black man is dead, mentally dead, spiritually dead, morally dead, he didn't just get there that way. There was a cause that preceded the effect of the mentally dead. And so if we want to get back to our former position, there has to be a cause that initiates that effect of the mental, spiritual, and moral resurrection. And that cause is Master Farrakhan Muhammad. And the effect is in process as we speak. And the principle of gender, everything has masculine and feminine energy. And it's almost like the same thing as polarity, is that everything has the opposite, but again, everything has masculine and feminine energy. Not everything is a man or a woman, but the energy itself. And so you have to learn the characteristics of those certain type of energies to be able to identify the masculine and feminine. And the thing about masculine and feminine energy is that they complement each other. They do not work in contrast, but they work in tandem, right? And so that's opposites attract. So negative and positive attract, they don't repel. And so in music and in art, the artist is able to manipulate all of these principles to give us a product that we then have to interpret the message. So the vibrations of the colors, the polarity of the colors, you wouldn't paint white paint on a white canvas. You would paint black paint on a white canvas. You have the color wheel, And so you have your warm colors and you have your cool colors. And so what complements red, the color red, which is a warm color on the color spectrum, would be the color opposite. I can't tell you which one it is because I don't remember it off the top of my head. But whatever is opposite on the color spectrum is a complementary color. And so same thing with music. You know, you have your hi-hats, and then you have your bass, right? You have your bass and treble. Those are vibrations that are complementary to each other. But jump in when you feel like it, because I feel like I've been talking for a long time. But and going back to art and the necessity to interpret, because you cannot really enjoy art or get the happiness from art if you don't interpret. And art speaks to us through symbolism, right? It speaks to us through symbols and symbolism. And so symbols is defined as the use of symbols to represent ideas or qualities. Symbolic meaning attributed to natural objects or facts, and artistic or poetic movement or style using symbolic images and indirect suggestions to express mystical ideas, emotions, and states of mind. Stop there. And so the thing about symbols, which art uses to convey those messages, is that it works on our subliminal mind. And that's the thing, the paradox of a human being, right? Is that if you tell us something outright and you give us a command, more than likely we will reject it outright. Because like I remember in one lecture, Minister Ava said, as lawyers are trained to convince a jury that they came to the decision that the lawyer themselves led them to. Because she said if you directly tell a jury what to do, they wouldn't like that and they'll think you're talking down to them. But if you can lead them to somewhere where they believe that they came to the conclusion, they're more likely to go with that suggestion. And so the subliminal, the word subliminal is defined as below the threshold of sensation or consciousness, perceived by or affecting someone's mind without them being aware of it. And so that is the power of art, is because it uses those subtle energies. It it uses those 7 universal principles, and it speaks directly to a deep level of consciousness that we're not even aware of. And so the things that we do the most outwardly, a lot of times are things that we are not aware of while we do them, right? And so it's because it has bypassed my consciousness and gone into my subconsciousness, which is really what drives those day-to-day practices and day-to-day things. And so when we were going back to the Cultural Revolution and about why it's so important to really make music and art and teach how to make music and art, is because it is the mind that is the originator of action. Everything that we do, before we do it, we think about it. Even if it's for an instant, we think about it before we do it. Like I'm learning in law school, in Louisiana, criminal intent can be developed in an instant. And so it is through art, which uses symbols and suggestion, that we can implant ideas into the minds. And so with the rest of the education that we talked about before this school, those are very direct types of education, right? That deal with giving people kind of skills and techniques and information that they can use. If they master them, they can manipulate them. But how do you teach somebody how do you teach somebody character? How do you teach somebody how to not just what to do, or what, how to complete a task, but what motivation they should have behind it, right? And so it's this is how you get to that core of that person. What drives them is that you go in through arts and culture, because it's through this art that inspires the senses. Because guess what? Our senses are the way we take in information, but ultimately it's it's interpreted and calculated by the what? The brain. So our senses are a direct way into our brains. And so that's why art is so important, is because this is a direct routing to the brain. I'm going to let you speak for
For
some,
a
but I
second.
just have more. Yeah, I told you, just I had a lot. So
Okay, well, praise be to Allah. You're right on it. I'm gonna. You said you had more. Okay. Well, I guess I'll inject, and then you could come back. So I want to bring up a quote from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad right quick, and it comes from out of the Theology of Time, and it actually is in an answer to a question that brother had sent. It was so maybe I won't get to answering his question before class next time, but this is the answer, part of the answer. And from out of the Theology of Time, and this goes to what you're saying. So I just want you to think about what you said and then what he said. In the Theology of Time, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, time is motion. We can't make time without motion. Whenever we make a motion, it is registering time. This is the way the universe is made. Now think about this. He said time and motion. He said there is no such thing as time before the creation of God. And listen at this, in the old universe. Make you go, make you go, In the old universe, we call it night. Was not a universe. It was just darkened, unlimited space. The darkness is still in the limit of space. If we could get out of the light of the stars, we would find ourselves again in total darkness. But I don't think that you will be smart enough to do that. You just not going to get out of the light of the sun and stars. To get out of the sunlight into starlight, you will have to go a long way. And it takes care of what astronomers call a family of a family. The sun does. The old universe, oh, that's part of my quote that I mean, what I was telling the person when I was answering. The old universe, let's call that the way he described it, we would call it in scientific vernacular, dark matter. Okay, but I'm not going to go into that. I want to skip down to the quote here. He says that the history of you have been taught to me as far back as the atom, and I have that bold, the atom that first burst births forth to give way to sound. Now, inside of the atom, there was light. But he said when that atom burst forth, it gave way to sound. Now, I want to take that. Now, we're talking, let's put on our thinking caps, because Allah, the originator, is the divine architect of the universe. Whenever you go to architecture school, you have to take art and you also have to take mathematics. So it's a combination between the two. Now, I'm going to share something else with us because there is a science that deals with this. Now, when the atom burst forth, it gave way to sound. Sound being the first cause, because when we say in the Quran or in the Bible, kun fayakun, be and it is. So we're talking about sound. He said, be, and it is. So what does that all mean? So let's go to this science. This is called the science of cymatics. You may or may not have heard of it, but cymatics is a science where sound gives form. And so cymatics here is ancient Greek, and it means wave, because when we talk about, we could say sound waves, but there's something that is different than just sound waves. We have something called gravitational waves, but we're not going to we're dealing with sound waves right now. We'll just stick in that realm where we say be and it is, and we're going to just use sound waves as the first cause. Okay, so, and it says it's a subset of the modal vibrational phenomenon. Okay, without getting too deep in it, but what happens here is that you have like a plate that is placed on top of, and I would have shown a video, but because of the copyright strikes, we don't want to get into that. But what happens is that you place a metal plate on top of a speaker, and what you do is that you put some type of particles on it, like sand or water. You all may have seen this, but what you do is that you inject sound into those particles, be it water or sand or whatever. And what it does at certain frequencies, it will produce certain patterns. So sound begins to form matter into shapes. Okay, this is how the God is creating. He's taking matter that has no form or shape, and he's injecting vibrations in it that we call sound, and it begins to start forming this matter into, like I said, shapes. Now, a while back, in one of the courses that we did mathematical theology, and we said one of the things that we teach our children is what we call sacred geometry. And so, and we said also that geometry is the first course that's taught, as opposed to teaching, algebra per se, because God geometrizes. So he has to give rise to shape. So in the Quran, it says that Allah is the fashioner of shapes. So when we're talking about fashioning shapes, we're talking about art. And so you have 5 fundamental shapes in the universe. Of course, as we said, we try not to give names to Johnny-come-latelys that come on the scene and say that, this is attributed to them. But there are 5 fundamental shapes in the universe, and I want to go to this. And these 5 fundamental shapes, they call tonic shapes. But these are the 5 fundamental shapes here. You have the tetrahedron. Okay, that's shape number 1, and it has each side has 3 points. Let me see if I can go back. You have that's not where I want to go. Then you have the cube, 6-sided. The tetrahedron has 4, and I won't do the animation so that we can move a little further. We have the octahedron that has 8, the dodecahedron, it has 12, and the isahedron, it has 20 faces. And so these are these 5 fundamental shapes of this universe. So when you're talking about sound giving rise to form, and then I'm going somewhere with here. This understanding, because the universe is not a flat plane. In other words, it's not like a sheet of paper. It's 3-dimensional. So when Allah creates shapes, they have to be at least 3-dimensional. So The two-dimensional form of a tetrahedron is what we teach children is a triangle. But see, we're teaching children that's a shadow. You produce the triangle when you have a light source, you have a tetrahedron, and then you have a screen that projects the shadow onto the screen, which is what we call a plane. This is called plane geometry, which is a two-dimensional surface. And so the triangle is actually the shadow, because the shape itself, the tetrahedron, blocks the light and produces the shadow of a triangle. The shadow of a cube is a square. You see, the shadow of let me see what else. The shadow of I think it's a Merkaba, is a star, what they call the Star of David, but that's something I'll show you later. So anyway.
The shadow of a sphere is a circle.
The shadow of a sphere is a circle. Thank you. So what's so fascinating about this is that this is more along the lines we are getting into the more of a, I'm not going to say it's a science, and I'm not going to say it's just an art. It's more of an esoteric understanding of art, science, music, mathematics. And so these are the ways, and it fascinates, the human being to understand or try to figure out these patterns. So what has happened is that they found through that there are certain natural patterns that occur. And I'm moving here to when we talk about sacred geometry, that Allah is the fashioner of shapes, and everything that he created, let's just say there's a program that's running the creation of it. And it's based on, we'll say this whole concept of sound, color, light, patterns, and it's called sacred geometry. So we have this study called sacred geometry, and it's really studying how Allah patterned his creation and looking for the patterns, looking at, an icicle. See how beautifully and magnificently it is formed. So let's just look real quickly at, you have these shapes, and so these shapes, they all have like different meanings. And so when you're starting to create art based upon these shapes, you can, as Sister Gabrielle left off on, that's why I want to interject here, you can transmit meaning through these shapes. And as we said, a triangle is a shadow of a tetrahedron. So if you can look behind, if you will, the triangle, you can see the tetrahedron. If you can look behind the circle, you can see the sphere. And so it says here, and I'm just gonna not really go too deep into it because we're not teaching the course of arts, culture, and general civilization. We're just really introducing how fascinating this school can be. But in this article, it says that that these shapes have meaning, and this is how they help us. It says it's the Platonic solids are thought of as sacred geometry, the building blocks of the universe that were taught in the Greek mystery schools some 2,500 years ago. And these are the tetrahedron, the ones that I said. And this triangle here is a symbol that underlies all of them. The triangle symbolizes balance, harmony, completion. The upward, rising upward, it elevates us to higher consciousness. And then you have the circle that represents wholeness, which you can kind of see how that could be the case without necessarily going into there. The square represents foundation, which we know we are taught that. So just think about what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was teaching us, okay? That there was something more in it than just, like I like the way Brother Jabril says it, playing with numbers. But he was teaching us all of this in a very simplistic language. It was so simple that we stumbled over it, but it had been here all along. And so what we're submitting is that what we have to do in our educational system, we have to make this real. And we have to teach from this point, because we're now trying to unlock the brain cells, okay? We're trying to unlock the brain cells so that we can go into this new reality that's hidden in plain sight, like the cube is hidden behind the square, like the sphere is hidden behind the circle. And so that's where we're trying to go, and that's what this education, and the way that we go is through the mind. So anyway, now I want to talk about, I wish that I could show a video on the cymatics, but the point of it is that cymatics, so when you start introducing the sound into these different particles, you get shapes. And these shapes, what they do is that they give rise to, like we said, or these vibrations give rise to shapes, right? Now, let's see where I want to go here. What I'm going to do is pause right here because I'm trying to see my screen and I don't want to get too distracted. I have something that's in front of my screen, but you go ahead and take up here and then I'll come behind you with what I want to add.
Okay. Let me, and so you have to stop sharing your screen so I can share something. And so going back to art and the importance of art and how art can be used to inject thoughts and ideas directly into our brains by bypassing our consciousness and getting coded onto our conscious. I just want to play a brief clip from my favorite lecture, July 21st, 2019, of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And it's actually just the beginning, his opening. And those are always my favorite parts of his lecture, his opening. But in the opening, he says something, and then I will show how art can be used if we might not understand it when he said it. One, he has already slipped it into our consciousness, but two, I will show how art can be used to convey these same messages, but with less words. Let me see here, share my screen. Oh no, I'm revealing my, okay, this is in my way. Okay, so make sure I share my sound. And I just want to, I see Sister Deborah was already smiling, but I just want to play the introduction to what he said, and I'll go from there. Can you hear it?
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness to the oneness of God, the originator of the heavens and the earth. I bear witness to the oneness of his prophetic community. I bear witness to the aim of God through Muhammad, through Jesus, to bring the whole of humanity together as one family. He created the diversity among human beings. He created colors in the earth, in the stones of the mountains. He created life in numbers that even the scientists don't know that exist. We have not yet discovered all that God has created, nor have we learned the hidden treasures that God has buried in every creature that He created. And the truth is, we have not discovered the God within and the beauty of our being, that the throne of God is on water, and the brain is baptized in water. And we have not yet discovered the greatness of our own brains.
So, and the reason, and it's the funny thing about it, is the reason that I was looking at this clip earlier is because we were debating on what topic we were going to do the podcast on. And so in preparation for that other topic, as soon as I was told of the topic, I was like, I know exactly what part of this lecture that I wanted to go to. And so, but it just so happened that this same part can be also be used to even talk about arts, culture, and civilization. And so it was, the minister said a lot just in those few words, but in that he talked about the God within, and he's talking about in human beings, and he's talked about the beauty of the human form and the human brain. And he says that the throne of God, so before he said that God is within us, so where does God sit within us? He sits on the throne, which he said sits on water, just like our brains sit on water. So vis-a-vis, our brains are the throne of God. And that's where God resides, in our brains. And, in another place that, we say that you can find God is in a temple and things like that. And the size of our heads, or our temporal lobe is called our temple. And between our temple resides our brain, or our prefrontal cortex, or the front of our brain, which is the one that makes all of the major decisions. And so from that, that's somebody saying it to you, right? And then when somebody said that to you, just like I said, when somebody tells you something direct, you might reject it. And especially if you've been told contrary to that all your life, you might just outright reject it because it goes contrary to your conscious thinking. You were told not to think that. You were told to believe that God was a mystery and a spook. And so when it's told to you, you might not accept it. But going to art, because there was a nice little video, like a little short video that dealt with this topic. So I just had to find like some pictures. But here's a article itself about the hidden meaning behind this fresco that was painted by Michelangelo on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Not the 16 Chapel, but the Sistine. And this is a famous scene called the creation of Adam, right? And so a lot of the artistic scholars and the religious scholars say this is the scene depicted in the Bible where God gives Adam life by touching him, by this touch. And then they go into all the the fact that their hands are not touching and God is reaching out to Adam while Adam is lounging, and really being lazy, and God is the one reaching to him and Adam is just, all that being said. But the thing behind this, going back to the minister's lecture, if you might have denied what he said, but if you notice God's this little area in the sky, or this vehicle, or this kind of his throne, maybe a floating throne or whatever, you see this God is moving, and he's reaching Adam from this place. But if how the subliminal mind works, because I was going to go into later or early, I was going to talk about the book Subliminal Seduction, which deals with how advertisers and movie companies and things use symbolic images of sex to sell products, because they know how the brain interprets symbols. Even if they don't understand it, it affects, going back, that art is affecting the subliminal mind. And so that's how our brains work, is since our brains work on seeing patterns, we notice that this image right here looks vaguely familiar. And so I'm going to go back to the article, and what they found is that this image of the creation of Adam is a representation of God's chariot is in the shape of a human brain, almost exactly anatomically correct. This image, right, when you look at it, oh, that's just God and the angels. But even down to the placement of the angels, and even this little green ribbon, and even down to this
I see
curvature of the
it.
hand, it represents the different parts of the brain.
You know what it looked like to me? I thought it looked like the inside of a woman's uterus.
I know you was gonna say it, but there's other parts of the Sistine Chapel that makes reference to human anatomy, and some of them include other images of the brain that are anatomically correct, and other images of like the female reproductive system. You see that a lot as well, and a lot. If you do study into symbolism, you will see through a lot of ancient and even modern. They still use it today in the advertisement. You will see anatomy, human anatomy, used in advertising to sell products, really, and it speaks to that symbol on how the brain works. But again, going back to art, right? I think we can all consider this art because it's highly organized, it's highly structured, it has a thought. You can see the thought out message. It has some deep thinking, and even it requires interpretation. It has all of those things that makes good art. But at the same time, subliminally, what this is telling us is that how does man communicate with God? Or how does man receive revelation from God? It's through the brain. That is how we commune with God, is through the brain. And so, and also going back to art, and we said that art is not just, the things that we recognize in Western society as high art, as in painting, sculptures, and things like that, but you also have architecture. And in architecture, again, going back to the temple in man, we established that the temple is, or the throne of God, or the temple in man, is in the brain. But then we also have in architecture, which is another form of art, because in here, this is a book, but this is the cover of a book, but this book deals with this is the temple in Luxor. Yeah, this is the temple in Luxor, and they superimpose.
I want to jump in right after you finish this point. I want to jump in, but go ahead and finish your point.
But as you can see, if you overlay the man over this temple, if you see the construction, because this is the aerial view of this temple, and then you can see that it has an abstract version of a human being. And so one thing I also took art theory along with music theory in my undergrad. And in art theory, I learned that, a lot of people misuse the word abstract art because we say when something is abstract art, it's just like, smoke patterns and random, scatterings of paint. That's abstract art. But no, if something is abstract, it is an oversimplified version of a thing, right? And so going back to Sister Deborah's reference of a stick figure is not a realistic version of a human being, but it's an abstract version of a human being that has all the necessary parts. You can see the head is on the top. You can see the proportion to the body, to the legs, the limbs, the legs and the arms. And so a stick figure would be an abstraction. So that's the same thing with the temple in Luxor. It's an abstraction of a human being. But also, I'm gonna say this one and I'm finished. But then also going to another temple that we hear about is Solomon's temple, right? And that's a big deal. And then we know that through linguistics, Solomon or Sol-O-Man or son of man, right? And Solomon's temple or the temple of the son of man is supposed to be represented in the architecture of Solomon's temple. So this is what most artists, when they do like some type of realistic reconstruction of the Solomon's temple, it usually always has these same parts because the parts of Solomon's temple are all detailed in wording in the Bible. So they took those, recreated what they thought that it would look like. And so you have this and you have this. But when you take Solomon's temple, again, going back to the floor plan, because again, where does God reside? He resides in heaven. So if you were in heaven looking down on earth, you would see these images clearly, just like with the temple in Luxor. It's the same thing with the temple of Solomon. I had to find my here we go. I think not that one. Okay, I think this is it. So now when we look at Solomon's temple, from the front, it might just look like a regular old building, a temple of sorts, maybe even a fort. It has just this rectangular shape with a couple of adornments. But when you look at it from aerial view, that's when it really gets interesting. And so here, this is the Temple of Solomon. And so again, I'm trying to rush through this, but when you do your studies, they always have those two pillars at the front of the Temple of Solomon, what they call it, Jackie and Boaz. Don't butcher me if I said it wrong. But when you take those floor plan and you look at it from above, now you take that pillar, when you see it from an aerial view here, you lay them out and you get an abstract version of a human being when you look at the Solomon's temple from the front. So again, where does God reside? He lives in the temple, but specifically in Solomon's temple, he resides in the Holy of Holies. And so when we look at this abstract version of a human being, we see that the Holy of Holies is where? In the brain or in the head. And that's where God resides. In the temple in man and in the holiest part of that temple in man. You go ahead, sister. Oh, wait. I think I had another one. I think I had one more. Is they showed also Solomon's temple from a, no. Here we go. I know where it is. This is also Solomon's temple from a side view. So when you take that temple, same pillars, you lay them out and you look at from the side view of Solomon's temple, they again correspond to a human being. So this is an abstract, architecturally or artistic representation of a human being. So there's pattern, there's correspondence, there's all these principles that are being presented that require interpretation. But before you even get into interpretation, what do you need? You need knowledge, right? And then when you interpret or you get the correct interpretation, you get understanding. But then when you apply that understanding, you get wisdom. Let me stop sharing.
Well, that was awesome. Okay, I'm gonna take it from there and just continue to build on what you already started. And so back to what I was saying earlier, that when Allah said be, and we had sound that was produced, and this sound brings into shape, or not going to say shape, organization of matter, then this sound, anything that is in motion is producing sound. And so going back to order, as Sister Gabrielle was saying, that what makes art, it has to do with order. And so Mother Tynetta talks about this, but we talk about the music of the spheres. So we're saying that in the beginning of the universe, and in the scientific world, they call it the radiation background noise or sound. It's just a sound that's out there, that's permeating everything in what we call space. And so literally, if you take these vibrations and you put them through a device that can transmit the sound, as in a radio, you put this background sound, radiation background sound, you have to tune into that frequency of sound that is out there in the universe. Of course, everything has a frequency, and then you modulate it, and then you can send it through a receiver. You can hear the background sound. You can translate that electromagnetic radiation into sound. And so anyway, we have the music of the spheres. So I just want to quickly just talk about this. And so we're talking about art and architecture on the highest form. And so this music of the spheres, or also is referred to as the harmony of the spheres, is an ancient philosophical concept that regards proportions in the movement of celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, planets, as a form of music. The music is not thought to be audible, but rather harmonic and mathematical or religious resonance. The idea continued to appeal to scholars until the end of the Renaissance, influencing many schools of thought, including humanism. And then so what I just wanted to bring is that you had that Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad talks about the atom bursting forth, giving way to sound. This sound is starting to organize the material, what we call the material universe, into patterns, which they call cymatics. And then those patterns begin to form shape, which are three-dimensional realities. And then from there, the motion of these objects that are out there creating, harmony. Just think about it. This universe is so beautifully ordered that that the sound that comes from it has to be a harmonic sound or harmonic resonance, because everything is just so beautifully ordered. So with that being said, now we go from there, and now let's talk about what was that sound? We talked about the missing note in music. And I want to go to what is called the solfeggio scale. Okay. And what is the solfeggio scale? I wanted to bring up here just a quick definition of what is it. And let me see if this is the right place where I want to go. What is it? This scale, and you see that it's associated with light, right? Or color. So going back to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad talks about in terms of this religion of God, it has to do with color, sound, and medicine. And they're all connected. And so this missing note, what we call the solfeggio scale, which also goes back to Plato. because, there's a, boy, I tell you, in the time of copyright strikes, because I would have shown you a video, and it's a video that I show to my younger children, which it also applies to the older. It's a Disney video that is dealing with Donald Duck, and he's talking about the solfeggio scale, and he's really giving you an animated history of Plato and this solfeggio scale, this quote unquote missing note. So in music, solfeggio um, is a pedagogical solemnization technique, which means putting a sound with a symbol. So how do we, what's the sound that the C note makes on a musical scale? So that's what that means. A technique for teaching the sight singing in which each note of a score is sung with a special syllable called solfeggio syllable. So we're talking about the solfeggio, and it is tuned to a different frequency and then what the scale that we have now is tuned to. So let's go to right quick. Now getting to the medicine, this is what I think is so fascinating about the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. All of it is hidden in plain sight. So if you have the right music, the right sound, it can produce a healing in the body. Literally, in ancient Chinese medicine, they talk about, introducing sound to correct certain things in the body. It's fascinating. So here we go. So what is this, the healing frequencies? And I just want to bring this up right here. And it says the healing frequencies of the human body, the full list and benefit. I'm not going to read all of them. It says while sound and frequency are used to impact human health several ways, there are specific frequencies that are regarded in alternative medicine to be particularly healing to the human body. And so this is a list of these different frequencies. You have 40 hertz, 174 hertz, 285 hertz, 396 hertz, 417, 432, which is this specific tuning scale that many people are now understanding that was a natural frequency, and that frequency was changed from the 432 hertz to 440 hertz for a nefarious, from what I understand. Some people say it's a conspiracy theory that's unfounded, but we're going to go with it right here. So 432 is the one that I want to look at. It says that this therapy is aimed at the heart chakra, and listening to 432 hertz is supposed to lead to greater levels of mental and emotional clarity. A 432 hertz tuning is considered optimal for tuning opera singers and is associated with higher levels of spiritual development. And so that's what we want to point out here. Now in 440, according to what I have seen, and I hadn't done a deep study of it, but they said that this tuning scale was changed, and it wouldn't be surprising if this is the case. It was a German, I don't know if it's a composer, but I know that they figured out that tuning the A tone to 440 actually changed. It was like a subliminal frequency that caused people to become more susceptible to suggestion. And so they said they tuned music, they played music in the German concentration camps, and they tuned it to 440, which made people they could make them more docile, because they were, I guess, whatever the message that they were sending through this particular frequency allowed them to be able to control the persons in the concentration camp more. So they needed less people to guard them because of this tuning frequency. And it says that music that is tuned at 440 hertz versus 432 hertz is considered cerebral music, which would not be far-fetched from what I'm saying with the mind control situation, the subliminal subduction, so to speak, that aids that aids in the listener's cognitive development. Sound frequencies at 440 hertz are considered to activate the third eye chakra. And so now what I want to go from here is music. Now the music scale is tuned at 440. There is a German a children's story, or not a nursery rhyme, but a fairy tale. Sorry about the sound in the background. I live in a very small town that has one traffic light, and we very seldom hear sirens. So that's probably gonna happen. It's like the chances of that happening again on the podcast are like being hit with a meteor. So it probably wouldn't happen again. So anyway, the next one I want to deal with is the Pied Piper. So this, I don't know how many people have heard about the Pied Piper, but this is a German fairy tale that deals with music and the ability to control certain people that are that the frequency is tuned towards. So it says the Pied Piper of Hamelin. It's a German story, or also called Pan Piper, or the Rat Catcher of Hamelin. And let's see. It says the legend dates back to the Middle Ages, the earliest references describing a piper dressed in multicolored or piped clothing, who was a rat catcher hired by the town to lure rats away with his magic pipe. The citizens refused to pay for the services as promised. He retaliates by using his magical instrumental power on their children, leading them away as he led the rats away. So what they're suggesting here, because these Germans knew some stuff and still do, but what they're suggesting here is that they can control. This is a form of mind control, and it's tuned to the frequency, in this case, of our children. So they know how to tune things to a frequency that could control you, which goes back to the concept of subliminal seduction. So why is this so important? Why, when we're talking about this in education, why is music so important as it relates to a holistic education for our children? Because the music itself has the ability to through music you can control, as Sister Gabrielle was saying earlier, the mind of people. You literally, it's an inroad into the mind, and you can use it for good, or you can use it for nefarious reasons. Now let me just bring this next thing to the table, and that is, there's something in music called, here it's called the devil's note, or the devil's tritone, and it's the history of the most sinister chord. So they're saying there is a musical note that they call the devil's note, and that it can create a certain atmosphere, as it says, a foreboding atmosphere. Now, as you know, as Black folks, we are extremely susceptible to sound. And they say that inside of our ears, that we have the hairs that are inside of our ears are very, very sensitive, because we have more melanin inside of our ear canals that make us more sensitive to sound. And you wonder why Black people, whenever you hear music, we tune to that music almost, subconsciously. We'll just start moving. And it doesn't affect everybody like that. You can watch some people that will sit up there and watch, listen to music and it doesn't move them at all. But Black people, because we're melanated and inside, we have so much melanin inside of our ears that we have a hypersensitivity to music and sound. So there's music that you can listen to that makes you want to fight. There's music that you listen to that makes you want to use drugs. There's music that you listen to that makes you want to have sex. They have figured out the science of controlling us through music. Now, if we can teach our children music that inspires us to create, music that unleashes the God, that potential that's within us, then we can move a lot faster along this road of trying to develop, because the purpose of this education is to make gods. And so if we can move a lot faster along this line, then we can produce, get to our end product quicker. Now, music is interesting because we're just talking about sound, but sound, when you can freeze sound, when you can freeze music, they call that now architecture. So Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, he is attributed with saying that music is liquid architecture and that architecture is frozen music back to the universe and how it's constructed through sound and vibration. And when you can freeze it, you get shapes, beautiful architecture. Why isn't it that the buildings that we see now, why aren't they like they used to be during the Gilded Ages or during the, as Sister Gabrielle was showing, during the time of in Egypt, where you saw the architecture that people were creating. And we're talking about 5,000 years. Some people say that the pyramids may be as old as 10,000 years old, some of them. So, and now we have all the modern equipment, but why aren't we creating like that? Because they know that when you create architecture that stimulates the senses, that you can produce these other effects. And so in order for them to kill the God within us, they give us, everything's created like a box. We don't have any rounded corners. We don't have any gilded art on anything because they want to kill that part in us. To that point, this is my last point, and then I'm done. I'm finished. Done and finished. I want to share with you all something that we have in the curriculum that is something the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, and I think that we've shared it with you all before. And this is in the curriculum, and it's like what Sister Gabrielle talked about with the temple and man. And we're suggesting that based on what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad has written, that the student enrollment itself is the is like the building blocks for the universe and man. And he says here, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he says, we teach the universe. You have a lesson that is given to you in Islam called and titled student enrollment. He says, you must know the answers to these questions before you will be permitted into the hereafter. Think over that, he says. You must know these answers. There are 10 questions. There are, he says, why are there 10? Because we had 10 questions in the universe originally that we must look forward to for our support in living in the universe in the sun. Understand what we are in. Understand what we are to know about what we are in. The universe, the Big 10, he says, this is our lesson. The universe, this is our home. The universe. This is the wisest that we must, the wisdom that we must acquire in order to call ourselves an educated person in the house that we live in. We don't have anything that we study that didn't come out of the universe. We are representing ourselves as the University of Islam because we are in the University of Islam. Some people look down on us and think that we don't know what we are talking about when we call our little school a university. We teach of the universe and we are learning the universe. If you don't know the entire universe of the sun, moon, and stars, you don't know where you are living. You must know the house you live in. And so they call in the Jewish tradition of the Kabbalah, this symbol or this shape is called the tree of life. And we know that the tree of life is a knowledge that we eat off of that permits us into another reality. And so we propose that the student enrollment is it can be superimposed over this tree of life because the universe is within. And so we talk about the 9 systems in the brain, right? We talk about the universe and man, that we have 9 planets in the messenger called the solar system, universe, and the sun. So he also said that, as Sister Gabrielle pointed out in the 7 laws of the universe, that there's a law of correspondence. And the law of correspondence says, as above, so is below. So the outer verse and the inner verse are mirrored images of one another. And so we are living in an outer verse, but the true universe is within. And so we have the number 1 of the student enrollment at the center, which represents the brain. And so it represents the center point on which all things are centered around, is connected to everything that's on the quote unquote tree. And so we say that we submit that these questions and answers are an archetype for building a new world of the kingdom of God. And so that's the interpretation of that student enrollment. And that's my personal interpretation. I'm not saying that's doctrine, but it just seems so, it seems to match up so much with all of the ancient schools of wisdom. And so it's just very, very fascinating that we have been given this and we've been pointed to in what he said about the student enrollment that we are. This is a universal teaching. So with that being said, we have gone on and on a subject that neither one of us know about for almost 3 hours. So with that being said.
Hey, we said we know science. We just didn't know art. And so when you start talking about the art and math of science, I'm back in the game.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and close it out. So any closing thoughts on that, Sister Gabrielle, about anything that we talked about today? We miss Sister Demoiselle, but we're not going to miss her because we're gonna close out our podcast with some music, which is the kind of science that we don't understand from Sister Demoiselle.
The only thing I want to close out is I just want to read from this book, Torchlight for America. I was trying to read it earlier, but I'm glad I saved it towards the end. And so just to wrap all of that up, after we went all into the science and the of art and culture and why it's important, how it can move human beings. Now let's work on that command. So it comes from Torchlight for America, page 97, from the section Promote a Cultural Revolution Through the Arts. It reads, the artistic community has historically been in the vanguard of social change. What is now what is now needed is for the artistic community to lead a cultural revolution. On the physical level, man is what he eats. Spiritually, as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7. If the American people are constantly fed with filth and garbage through newspapers, magazines, television, movies, plays, and music, if the public, like the proverbial swine, has become a lover of filth, and, and if its thoughts, and if its thoughts guide behavior, what do the thoughts of the American people produce? Do the thoughts of the American people produce rape, incest, murder, theft, greed, and the destruction of family and the institutions of society? I would argue that the answer is yes. Therefore, along with summoning the spiritual leadership to convene with leadership in government, the artistic community needs to be shown its representation. No, excuse me. The artistic community needs to be shown its responsibilities to the overall mental and spiritual health and well-being of society and the world. Our gifts as artists are a blessing from God. We have the responsibility of the proper use of our gifts. Additionally, movie producers, record producers, and publishers all have a responsibility to the spiritual, moral, and mental well-being of the American people. So that's what I would like to end off on the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on the cultural revolution uh, through art and the responsibility of artists and those involved in producing art.
Okay. Um, all right. That's Sister Demoiselle questioning me about what I'm about to play. So she was obviously tuned in. And that just goes to show how much, Emma, how much we miss her. Because if you were trying to communicate with us through chat, I didn't know how to do it. So I'm sorry. She normally takes care of that. So she is missed and I couldn't figure it out. So with that being said, yes, I was going to play educational leadership. Is that okay? So I'll ask that question because she said or do freestyle. So we'll see which one we're going to play. So she is most definitely missed on the podcast because I just couldn't figure out how to get the chat. So if you have any comments, what we're going to ask you to do is just leave them in the comment section below. It won't be in real time, but it is what it is. Um, so she hasn't answered me back about which one to play, but we thank you for joining us and sticking in here with us for all this time on a subject that we really not totally familiar with, but when you start dealing with the science and the mathematics, as Sister Gabrielle said, we can speak on some aspects of it. So Sister Demoiselle has the what you say the performing arts side of it, and so we're gonna end out with, and I'll let that end us, take us to the end. And I may do both videos, but because I think it's warranted doing both of the videos. But what I would like to say is thank you for joining us. If you like what we've had to share with you, please give us a thumbs up, as Sister Gabrielle does the little thumbs up sign. Please make sure that if you're not a member of our community, that you go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so that way you can be informed of any information or content that we upload during the week, and as well share this information with somebody who you think that could benefit from it. But know that the education that we're submitting to you is this educational paradigm, new educational paradigm, is a holistic educational paradigm that's designed for us as a people, us as the righteous, to be able to enter into the next phase of this life called the hereafter. So we thank you and for joining us, and join us next week, inshallah, at the 5-ish hour on Saturday. And we will have some other very interesting and engaging topic that we would like to share with you. So we're going to leave out with Sister Demoiselle because she's not here. She's gone but not forgotten. We're going to leave out. We're going to start off with the first video will be one that she did, her and my other son that you all have never met, named Montrell. They were commissioned to do a rap for Dr. Abul Petrie's book, Farrakhan's Educational Leadership. And then after that, we're gonna have a video that Sister Demoiselle did as a challenge that was posed to the listeners of the Brother Marcus and Sister Cecilia talk show years ago. So some of the other one is pretty old, maybe about 5 years old. And yeah, so thank you.
Oh, I'd just like to mention this one thing since we're talking about arts and culture. This background of mine, this virtual background, this is actually a picture that a sister in the Nation of Islam Commission. I'm
in the seventh region.
Yeah, she's from the 7th region though. And the sister has she's a brilliant artist, but this is a depiction of as you can see, beautiful GT class.
Yes.
So, yeah, I just want to put that in there.
That's right, arts and culture. Let the revolution begin. Okay, so with that being said, we're going to go ahead and bring you into the video of Sister Demoiselle. Let me pull it up. And let me share my sound. So let me pause it just for a second here. Okay, I don't know what happened, Sister Gabrielle, but I'm assuming she's somewhere around. I just need to share my sound and then I'll go back.
I just like the sound of it.
First, let's start with the knowledge that you get in these colleges and secondary schools, making slaves and tools. And some fools really think that they getting it. Go out into the world, still see that you unfit. This education ain't elevating, it's decapitating and castrating the whole nation. So serving your role in society, start climbing to the top, still only see their feet. Your talent becomes a resource for the ruling elite. They use you up, put you out, replace, repeat. The education for domestication. Deposit certain skills and information. If you ain't here, incarceration. The school to prison pipeline is what you face. We need our own teachers and our own schools, our own curriculum and our own rules. Stimulation and education. Cultivate your skills with information. Inspiration, transformation, and concentration. That God power will be demonstrated. Educational
And
Louis Farrakhan, man. Get the knowledge, gain the wisdom, then you wisdom.
all right. Educational leadership and Louis Farrakhan, leader teacher, man. Did you understand?
Farrakhan, the leader, teacher, and guide, in servitude of his people and Allah. His selfless actions and love is our reward. With this teaching, my pen is mightier than your sword. Yeah. Bad day is here to even the score. Monty is here to win the war. The squad is dropping knowledge, meteor. Just sit and listen to these words I implore. Empower my people through perseverance and humility. Getting the wisdom and understanding so I can teach them a seed. I have educators throughout my family tree. They're trying to take us out by any means. What I'm telling you is that we're a dying breed. A message to my black people, we gotta change the ideology. That if it ain't right, it ain't right. It's time to fight for your life.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us that he who gives you the diameter of your knowledge prescribes the circumference of your activity. Educational leadership, and Louis Farrakhan, leader, teacher, and get the knowledge, gain the wisdom, then you understand. Then you understand. Educational leadership, and Louis Farrakhan, leader, teacher, and get the knowledge, gain the wisdom, then you understand. Then you understand.
Special shout out to the Southwest, the Southwest region. And furthermore, this shout out goes to the Bedroom Study Group 6-5. Let's go. To all of the MGT who begin at GCC, mother of civilization, the owner, the ruler, the goddess, the queens. You ain't got a thing, you better come and get it. N-O-I, nigga, come and get with it. My Islam tight and my new welfare, and I do my religion like you do yours. See the sun, moon, and star. Yeah, they recognize who we are. All up on the internet, run around town talking bad about Farrakhan. Yeah, you can try to run it, then back, oh no, no. Cause you got 300 that's waiting and ready and willing to go. So this weapon of truth, you cannot defeat, you cannot compete. So just to believe, no dogmatics, Islam is mathematics. Divide it, add it, subtract it, multiply it, in the measurements. Check the evidence. Do you have no sense? Well, maybe not. How we always in the same spot? Oh no, we ain't maybe yet. It ain't time for rest, it's time for war. Get dressed. He already told you what's next, and they claim that it's justified. Pray you on the right side, and to the mighty, mighty FOI. To the soldiers who be on the front line, look at you now, showing them how. You the real kings, wearing the crown. Hold up, but give praise to the God in the person of Master Farad, who raised up the one who raised up a son, showing us how to get rid of Shaitan. And we ain't worried about the boys in blue. They don't understand, see, we got torches too. When you walking with God, we got the torch of truth. Real truth strong enough to make a mountain move. Imagine that. We got actual facts. No guessing games, just writing exact. UNIT, why we need, already said, by any means. So we coming to our people through the frequency. So we coming to our people through the frequency. The shock of the hour, we're moving our cowards. Hear all of the cries, it's finna get louder. So struggle through pain, it's gonna be ours. The time is now, let's regain our power. The time is now, let's regain our power. The time